slowly encroaching on my space up here. I have conspiracy theorists about all the stuff that gets done up here. Y'all thought I was nuts there for a minute, didn't you? There's no need to amen that, okay, folks? Galatians chapter 4. Galatians chapter 4, starting in verse 12. And it's good to be in the house of the Lord today, is it not? Galatians chapter 4, starting in verse 12. Brothers, I entreat you, become as I am. For I also have become as you are. You did me no wrong. You know it was because of a bodily ailment that I preached the gospel to you at first. And though my condition was a trial to you, you did not scorn or despise me, but received me as an angel of God, as Christ Jesus. What then has become of your blessedness? For I testify to you that, if possible, you would have gouged out your own eyes and given them to me. Have I then become your enemy by telling you the truth? They make much of you, but for no good purpose. They want to shut you out, that you may make much of them. It is always to be good to be made much of for a good purpose, and not only when I am present with you, my little children, for whom I am again in anguish of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. I wished I could be present with you now and change my tone, for I am perplexed about you. Interesting passage right here in the middle. Notice that Paul has changed the way he's addressing the Galatians. If you go all the way back to chapter 1, notice he begins with, I am amazed, bewildered, that you are abandoning the one true God. And then you go to chapter 3, and the phrase is, you foolish Galatians. And when we talked about the word fool there, does not mean village idiot or court jester, but more along the lines of the way we'd use the word stupid. You stupid Galatians! You morons! And he softens his tone now with them and calls them brothers. And he begins to talk to them about how he first arrives with them and how they received him before they made their transition away from grace alone to grace plus works. And how it has changed the way now they receive the apostle of Jesus Christ. That thing is really starting to bug me. Push that in like that. I entreat you, become as I am, for I have also become as you are, and you have done me no wrong. This phrase is difficult to translate in the Greek. It is extremely wooden and it's extremely rough. And I guarantee you, unless you have the NLT, New Living Translation, you have pretty much what I have here. This is one occasion where the New Living Translation actually crushes and gets the full sense of what the Greek verbiage is saying. And I will read it for you. Now, brothers and sisters, I plead with you to live as I do in the freedom of these things, for I have become like you Gentiles, who are free from the law. And you did not mistreat me when I first preached it to you. See the difference? Look, I, Paul, who was the Jew of Jews, I, Paul, who was zealous above all my peers, I, Paul, who amongst my peers was head and shoulders above them all, I was the quintessential Jew. I left that behind for the fullness and richness of the glory of Jesus Christ and became like you Gentiles. I cast off this works-based theology. And now I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you, I'm begging you who know this firsthand to come back. Why? Because you have drifted into a works-based theology. I left it because it had no value. I left it because it treated me as a prisoner. I left it because it treated me like a child. And I'm pleading with you who have had it, tasted it, were first brought to you, to return to it. He's approached them theologically. He's approached them directly. He is now approaching them through the plea of a good teacher for them to abandon and come back to the truths they held initially. And then his statement is, "For you have done me no wrong," has this kind of force. You have not done me any wrong when you first heard what I was saying. But now, as you are transitioning back or into this faith plus, you are wronging me and you're wronging what was said. Let's take a look. Paul tells them how he comes to see them. And we see this. "You know, because of bodily ailment, that I preached to you the gospel to you first. And through my condition, or though my condition was a trial to you, you did not scorn to despise me. You received me as an angel of God or as Christ." There's a lot of people that write about what Paul's condition was. We just don't know. They think it's an eye condition because of the plucking at your eye and give it to him, but that could just be a colloquialism. And a lot of times when we try to take colloquialisms or figures of speech and force them woodenly, we miss the point. Paul has a disease. Some people believe that Paul had malaria or a very bad case of dysentery or something that would have defiled the individuals and the Judaizers there. That's really the force of what he has. I had a disease. The way you first heard the gospel message come from me is that I had a debilitating illness that was of the case that the Jews would not receive me for fear of this. This is one theory of what he's saying. The other is that he's got something going with the eye, and then again, that would defile somebody else or one of the Jews. And so Paul is saying, but you received me not based upon law. You received me as an angel of God. Angel of God, or as the Christ Jesus. Why? Look at this. The condition was such that it would bring despisement. So it wasn't something that was easily clothed, easily hidden, easily put away with. Remember a while back I talked to you about legalism and this concept of the faith plus works concept, that it is not very forgiving. I'll give you a classic example. How many of you ever heard of zero tolerance laws? Right? Zero tolerance laws are the antithesis of thinking. They are. They sound like a great thing, but they are the antithesis of thinking. Because what it says is, well, this happened, this is the response. Zero tolerance, I have no discretion in disability. It's the antithesis of thinking. That's legalism. Grace is thinking. This happened, but there may be a mitigating circumstance, and let me do some investigation and then give my decision. Under legalism, on the whole, forgiveness is based upon whether or not you committed an infraction. And whether or not you were truly repentant upon committing the infraction. Why? Because our salvation is based upon me doing good things and not committing infractions and the work of Jesus Christ. Under grace, forgiveness comes because I was forgiven, therefore I forgive. See the difference between the two. And the Gentiles early on, the Galatians early on, received Paul just like they would have received Jesus Christ, because though while Paul's condition may have made them unclean according to Jewish law, they received him anyway because they understood the concept of grace-based theology and not works-based theology. And here's the problem, folks. You say, well, you keep hitting on this. Yeah, Paul hits on this all the way through chapter 6. Why? Because Paul knows his audience. And his audience is flawed. Anytime we start down the road of faith plus works, anytime we go down the road of legalism, we become less forgiving to the ailments of others. It's easier to walk past the person on the corner and say, well, Simply, he has to pick himself up by his own bootlaces, not knowing the condition that he is in, nor caring as to the circumstances why. What was the charge given to Paul and to Barnabas when they left Jerusalem? Do not forget the widows and the poor. And yet under legalism, that's very easy to do. Why? Because, well, they've got themselves in a situation and they need to work themselves out of it. And as long as they want to stay in that condition, my hands are tied. Well, you dug your hole, now you live in it. That's forgiveness based upon the legalistic model. Under the grace-based model, I have been forgiven as the wretch that I am by my Lord and Savior. And therefore, I have a requirement to forgive all who wrong me because I have wronged my God. And for me to withhold that forgiveness is to now not receive or be forgiven from my God. But see, we like the rules side because then we can determine who to forgive. See, it goes back to zero tolerance. See, now I don't have to think. This plus this equals this. You do this, you did this, this is my response. See, we don't have to think about it. And thinking scares a lot of people. That's why we have zero tolerance laws. We don't want to think anymore as a culture. Grace requires us to look at the situation and go, this person wronged me deeply. This person despises me greatly. This person does not fit. But folks, if we were to look at ourselves through the eyes of Christ and see us for what we truly are, not what we think of ourselves, the same dialogue goes on. Imagine this guy. Man, Jesus, if you forgive that guy, do you know what he does? Do you know the things he says when no one's around? Do you know what he wishes to do when people get in his way? And yet you're going to forgive that? Why? Because it's grace-based. Christ dies for us, and our salvation is determined upon the merits of Christ. They received Paul not because of the external looking of Paul's body, but because they understood the grace of Jesus Christ and received Him as though they would have received Jesus Christ Himself. Legalism says no. Legalism says no. I grew up in a church that many of you would be grossly underdressed for. And you would be asked to go home and get a suit and tie or not come back. That's legalism. Did we receive you as one would receive Jesus Christ in that church? Absolutely not. Why? Because your clothes have determined your spirituality, not you. What? We have this in a culture today. We have this in our own culture today. We do this a lot. And Paul is making this point to them. And then notice what Paul says as I take a drink. You didn't despise me. But check this out. What then has become of your blessedness? You people who receive me like Jesus Christ, you people who receive me in a state of vile appearance, whether it's dysentery or malaria or a gaping sore eye that has pus and ugly stuff that just kind of oozes down. Imagine me preaching with this big giant ooze going down my chin. Yeah, and then I got something on my glasses, so now clean those for a minute there. I'm not going to ask you if it's warm in here. I think I'm sweating because I was watching Eric play the drums. Either that or when I got up this morning, I thought about going for a run, and I am so exhausted. I don't even have to say it's funnier when you laugh. Y'all got that one. What has happened of your blessedness? You people who received me graciously, even though physically I was detestable, even though physically I could make you unclean, you received me. But now, in your legalistic faith plus mindset, where is that blessedness now? Where is that grace now? Why does legalism affect the church, and why is it important? Because it affects how we treat members of the body and affects how we live our life to the world. Which is why it's very easy to say, don't go to that church, there's nothing but hypocrites that live there. Or churches are full of hypocrites. You're right, we are. Come join us like the rest of us. Come on, you're one too. Because we have a set of rules that we claim we live to, and then we expect grace when we break them. How many of us love to get grace when we break the rules? Right? I have never seen any, when I had a soldier come to me and ask me, Chaplain, will you please talk to my chain of command? And because they're about ready to hammer me through the floor, go, but I deserve it, and you go tell them to max me out. To max someone out is give them the total. I've never had a soldier go, Chaplain, when you go and tell my chain of command, I want the full penalty. Tell them to give me everything. You go tell my commander I'm guilty and max me out. I would look at him and have him locked up on the 5th floor. That's where they go for the mental patients. Why? Because usually when they come, go, Chaplain, can you talk to my chain of command about being lenient? We all want leniency when we're the one breaking the rules. But here's the problem. Are we lenient to those who break the rules against us? Because that's the true test. Oh yeah, I believe in grace when it's about me. Right? And we always tend to be more gracious with people we never know. Have you ever noticed that? We tend to be harder on our families than we ever are on this total stranger. Right? Stranger bumps you with the car. Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It's all right. Your kid bumps you. Hey, watch it! You see me standing here, 220 pounds of adult. Not that I'd ever do that in a store. I think I hurt myself, though. What has become of your blessedness? What has become of the spirit you had that received me when I was detestable before you? For if I testify that if possible you would have gouged out your eyes and given them to me, you would have removed body parts to give me when you first met. Now you don't even know me. You treat me despicably. This goes back to that first part. You did not wrong me then, but you are beginning to wrong me now. Such commitment that if Paul's ailment was about his eye, they would have plucked out their own eye. That is the commitment of the community of grace, not of law. What happened to your blessedness? What happened to that level of the fidelity that we had? Well, you've abandoned it. You've left it. You have embraced the thing that imprisons you. You've embraced the thing that makes you a child. You have embraced the thing that requires no thinking. Why? Because all I got to do is keep a checklist. I don't have to think about my relationship with Jesus Christ. I just check blocks. And that is why you have people who have been in churches all their life that know nothing. And if you're in your Sunday school lesson this morning, if you were in 1 John, it kind of talks about how would you introduce Jesus to the world? Well, first of all, that would require that you would know something about Jesus. When I was a machinist, there's two types of machinists. One man who has run one machine for 20 years. Or a man who could run any of the machines in the shop for 20 years. Both use the same name. Both use the name machinist. One is a skilled laborer. The other one is a tool operator or a machine operator. And inside the machinist world, there's a huge difference. Same thing within the Christian world. We have those who come in and are pew potatoes, pow, and they just check off blocks. And we have others that come in and they are grace-based and they seek to learn more about this God who has delivered them and why He would do it. What has happened? What has happened to your blessedness That you would remove your eye when I first got there. Have I become your enemy by telling you the truth? How many of you have ever had the difficult conversation of having to tell someone about the behavior of a loved one and know they're not going to believe you? You know, I'm here to talk to you, or have to go talk to somebody about their behavior. I'm here to talk to you about your behavior. This is what I've been noticing. And what is normally the reaction? Is it always, Brother Ashley, thank you so much for pointing out my behavior and the flaw that I have. And let's pray together and resolve to live in newness of life and in harmony together as good bodily Christians. That's usually never how the conversation goes. Usually the person feels attacked, does they not? And then in the feeling of attack, how do they respond? They respond with the attack back. They treat the person as enemy. If you've ever had a serious conversation with family, family's the best one, isn't it? You've got to go put them boundaries up for family, and and now all of a sudden you're the bad guy. You're the bad guy for doing the right thing. Right? How does the family treat you? Wow, I'm so glad you put that boundary up. Oh, you are such a loving son. You're such a loving son. You're such a loving husband. No! They look at you and go, the problem is you. You keep stirring up the pot. I'm just setting boundaries, people. Paul has addressed this congregation and said, you have crossed a boundary back away from salvation by faith alone. And because I speak the truth to you, you now treat me as an enemy. When I was in Italy, I had the contemporary service, which was kind of odd because at the time I wasn't a very contemporary fan. And they just said, well, you're Southern Baptist, and Southern Baptists like contemporary music, so we'll put you in a contemporary service. I said, Southern Baptists like chicken too, but I'm not working at Popeyes. That kind of logic, you can build just about any case against anybody. So anyhow, I get down there, and I have a strain of legalism, and I have a strain of Judaizer controversy in there. I come to find out it was 3, but I identified 2 that were teaching a works-based salvation. One was a chaplain that was paired with me, and I got him removed because he was a heretic. Because he denied the third person of the triune God. That makes you a heretic. And he was preaching works-based theology. That makes you a heretic. Both of those. Get the H word for that one. And then I identified another individual, and he was working in the Cadence Ministry House. Now, this doesn't mean that Cadence Ministry is the same way, but this guy was in the Cadence Ministry House. And he had built a Jewish yeshiva on Friday night, except he wouldn't use the terminology. He would just call it a family dinner time. And then the girls would go off and do a teaching, and the guys would say, which is very much like a Jewish yeshiva. And then they would begin to teach this faith plus doctrine. And in the 3 years I was there, I worked very hard to eradicate it. Because, folks, that's poison to the evangelical church. That's poison to those who believe in the Trinity when you don't believe in one of the members. It's kind of like me denying that Kimmy is my child. For those of you that have seen her, can I really make that case? No, she's all me, all day on steroids. It's kind of hard to deny salvation by faith alone, even if you read James. And worked very hard. And as I left, I thought that I had weeded it out because it's in so destructive manner. But there was one of the members that was laying in wait till I left. And when he left, a good friend of mine, who was the music minister, fell into that nonsense and converted into that movement. And has treated me as an enemy since then, because I present to him the truth every time he comes back with that. It's poison. It poisons churches. It poisons your understanding of Christ. It poisons the work and benefit of Christ. Paul's not picking some ethereal argument, some unnecessary point, some difference of something that's not important. Paul is picking something that attacks Christianity at its core and is addressing it to the church and to these individuals, and their response as they've drifted off into it is hostility back to the messenger. Folks, that's usually the response to the truth, is hostility. I have rarely ever confronted someone about their wrongdoing that instantaneously go, "You're right, I'm guilty." They may eventually work their way that way. So Paul's addressing and saying, why am I now your enemy? You know me. I've been with you. You've treated me when I was sick. You had blessings. And now, because you've drifted away and I confront you with the truth of the gospel message, I am now your enemy? Why is that? They make much of you, but for no good purpose. The legalist, the Judaizer, the faith plus person. They want you in their group, not because it benefits you, but because it benefits them. They are not out for your betterment. They are not out for your knowledge. They are not out for your growth. They are out to imprison you. The sole purpose of them seeking you out is to get you on their team, to where then they can say, but look at how many people agree with us. It's an appeal to authority argument. Look, there's more people that agree with my mindset. Folks, when the Mormons come and knock on your door, they're not looking out for your eternal soul. They say that, but they are not. But they keep coming back, don't they? Week after week after, unless you have a sign up there that says, no, anyhow, I won't go down that road. The legalist, he's not about your betterment. He's about your enslavement. Bart Ehrman, if you were here on Wednesday night, made the point about pastors, and an excellent point, that a lot of pastors do not bring things up to their congregations because, one, they don't want to instill doubt in teaching people the idea about the text or different viewpoints about the text, because they don't want the people to think that there's this doubtable concept about the security of the Bible, and that pastors are about conformity and professors are about educating. That's a horrific statement to be made back about pastors. Pastors teach the Bible in a way to bring conformity, not education. Conformity of belief, not making you thinkers. Is that really what we want? For you to be taught what you would conform to, not what you might want to study and know? See, within the church we hear the word question or let me teach you a differing view, and we think that somehow that's going to lead people down the road of hell. Here's the thing. The great concept of being a teacher is that it's okay to hold to different theologies. I hold to probably a different view at the end time than many of you. I came up in a different time. Neither one of those will send us to hell. Neither one of those disturbs the doctrine of the Trinity. Neither one of those disturbs the doctrine of the Son. Neither one of those disturbs how salvation occurs. And the fact of the matter is, I like the idea of the pan-millennialist. When it all pans out, we'll know. It's funnier when you laugh. But yet, you'll have people that will fight tooth and nail today that say that if you don't believe this, you're not Christian. A good teacher Would rather you wrestle with the text and know how to defend what you believe than to believe exactly the way the teacher is teaching. I would rather you wrestle with the text and be able to defend why you believe what you believe than just say, well, the pastor said it. See, that's the legalist view. I said it, you must believe it. If you don't believe it, you don't belong to the fellowship. I came out of a very fundamentalist background. We had ways to keeping people in check. Shame, guilt, derision. You don't ever leave. Why? Because we'll shame you into coming back. Are they out for my betterment? Were they out for the betterment of my soul, or that I maintain certain rules? Is that grace? Is that the grace of God demonstrated to man? Or is that law? They want to shut you out, that you make much of them. The purpose and the whole thing about the legalist is bringing you in to make them more. It is always good to be made much of. It is a good thing for you to be wanted. It is a good thing for people to seek you out and to train you. It is not a good thing for them to seek you out to enslave you. And not only for when I am present with you, my little children, for whom again I am in anguish of childbirth until Christ is formed with you. One of the accusations against Paul is Paul's not here, Paul has abandoned you. We're here and we're here to take care of you. See, Paul has abandoned you to this false message, but we're here and we'll take care of you. And Paul says, I would love to be with you, and even when I am with you, I would teach you the exact same message as I'm writing in this letter, because the message it doesn't change in my presence or not in my presence, because the message is based upon what Christ does. And I am like a mother who's giving birth, hoping that with this thing of Jesus, this activity of Jesus, gives birth in your heart and in you and change you from a path of faith plus to faith alone. I wish I could be present with you and change my tone, for I'm perplexed about you. I still am perplexed at how you could believe a gospel that is not the gospel. I am still perplexed how you could be bewitched by a sorcerer to believe a lie. I am still befuddled that you would throw down your weaponry. That's what it means when Paul says abandon or desert. To throw down your weaponry and pick up the weaponry of the enemy and fight against the cause of Christ. I am perplexed that you could do that, having once tasted the freedom of grace alone. Paul's question is as true today for us as it was then for the Galatians. Do we embrace legalism? If we do, then we are embracing a religious belief that is void or soon will be void of graciousness. Do we like to have a nice set of rules to check off in our lives and make everyone else adhere to them as well for them to be believers? Well, if that's the case, then that eliminates thinking about who God is in your life, because all I do is check blocks. Should Paul look at us and ask why he is perplexed? If you're here today, I've tried to live my life by rules. I've tried to live my life by being a good man. being a good person, being a good woman, a good kid. Folks, you can't be good enough. And you say, you've said this a bunch, you're right. I keep saying it again. You can't be good enough. You can't be rich enough, pretty enough, handsome enough, smart enough, dressed enough. There's not an enough that can win you salvation. Salvation comes because the Father, at the appointed time in history, sent His Son into the world to be nailed to a tree for your crime. When we begin to do the enough, we cheapen that sacrifice. Are you tired of living the life of enough? If you are, I'll be here at the front as the praise band comes to sing. I'll have my microphone turned off, and me and you can talk about the life-changing experience that awaits, where enough is in Christ alone. As the praise band comes to sing.